Hey everybody, what's going on? Frankie Love coming at you. On October 1st, 2011, Mr. No Limits, Chris Banks, remember the name, Chris Banks, made his long-awaited return to Warriors Wrestling at Livewire 2011. Now, while everybody thought it was a good thing, after the things that went down, some don't think it was a good thing. You see, depending on who you ask in regards to Chris leaving Warriors in the first place, some people will say he quit, while others will say he was future endeavored. Now, Chris was supposed to return to Warriors of Wrestling with a match. But prior to Livewire, Chris met the commissioner of Warriors because Chris didn't want to come back on other people's terms. He wanted to come back on his own terms. Also, being that this was such a big thing, the Warriors of Wrestling had t-shirts made up for Mr. No Limits, Chris Banks. Remember the name, Chris Banks. And the shirts were to be sold for $18 a piece. What do the shirts look like? Well, here you go. Taking it to the limits, then it's changed to No Limits 101. And like I said, remember the name, Chris Banks. Now, the Warriors of Wrestling were going to sell these shirts at their merchandise stand for $18. That is until Chris Banks got his hands on them and then sold them outside during intermission for only $15 a piece. Now, so again, Chris Banks stated that he bought these shirts, while the powers that be say he stole them. Now, let's dig a little deep into this, okay? Because Chris Banks is Puerto Rican, and for the last few years that he's been in Warriors Wrestling, he hailed from Canada, to make you think that the powers that be wanted you to think that Chris Banks was Canadian. Now, here's one for you. Okay, being my superior intellect and all, I actually thought that it was quite possible for Mr. Banks to be Canadian, to the point that I even bought him a pair of tights with the Canadian outfit on them, because Chris and I are such good friends, and that's what friends do for each other. But you got to think of it this way, okay? Could he be Canadian? Quite possibly. Reasoning being this, okay? If a Mexican can travel from Mexico into the United States and be a Mexican American, okay, what's to stop a Puerto Rican traveling from Puerto Rico into Canada? I mean, there's black Canadians, there's black Europeans, there's Mexican Americans, so why not Puerto Rican Canadians? So I actually bought into this thing, but turns out he's just plain old Puerto Rican, and he's from Brooklyn, now residing in Jersey, I think. But that's not the point. The powers that be really expected you to believe that he wasn't even Puerto Rican. He was just plain old Canadian. I mean, if you look at the fucking guy, you can tell he's Puerto Rican, but that's besides the point. Also, powers that be say Chris Banks stole these shirts and didn't pay the $18 a piece for them before he sold them outside for $15 a piece. Now, did Chris buy the shirts? Think about it. He's Puerto Rican. Does a Puerto Rican really buy stuff? No. Now, stealing. Stealing is such a hard word. I prefer to say Chris Banks permanently borrowed the shirts that were made in his likeness. Okay? Chris Banks permanently borrowed these shirts from the man that tried making money off of his name, okay? Chris Banks permanently borrowed these shirts and did what any smart person would do, and that's make money off himself. So Chris Banks permanently borrowed the 16 shirts that the powers that be had made, took them, and sold them. Okay? So, let's see. Chris Banks took 16 t-shirts, right? And he sold them for $15 a piece. So Chris Banks made $240 for selling himself. Not selling himself, but selling likenesses of himself in this t-shirt. This lovely t-shirt right here. Remember the name, Chris Banks. Now, how can you get one? Well, I'm sure if you go to the next Warriors of Wrestling show, the Brooklyn Lyceum, November 12th, in Brooklyn, you can meet up with Chris Banks, because I'm sure he'll be there. He may not be wrestling, but I know he'll be there, because he's my boy. And, you can give Chris Banks $15 and get one of these shirts. Small, medium, large, extra large, fat ass, really fat ass, whatever size you are. I urge you to do the right thing and give Chris Banks $15 for these lovely t-shirts, because you're not going to get a better quality shirt for that price. I'm telling you that right now. But anyway, Chris Banks. Remember the name Chris Banks. Get the shirt. If you want, I'll even give you his phone number. If it's alright with him, of course. So, stealing, permanently borrowing? He bought him? Who knows? Because you got to remember one thing, everybody. There's 3 sides to every story. Yours, mine, and the truth. I'm Frankie Love, telling you to go out and buy Chris Banks' new t-shirt. When you see him at a Warriors of Wrestling show, I'm Frankie Love. I'm out. Peace.